Welcome everybody to this week's PR Tech Wednesday. I'm really excited and grateful to have my old friend Lee Odden on the phone. How you doing, Lee?
I'm doing great, Eric. It's great to be here. Hello, everybody.
I mean, gosh, I'm thinking back.
Good to see you.
You came in, and I think you did a keynote, like the first Digital Impact, and that PRSA produced. Remember, they did those Digital Impact conferences. And it was the first one, I want to say it was downtown in the financial district. And I think you did a keynote. And I think that's when we met. And I think that was 20 years ago, man.
Yeah, it was been a long time.
And at that point, it was SEO. It was like, that was the deal. And
all
now
SEO.
It's influencer marketing and content marketing, but, you know, from humble beginnings.
Sure. Yeah, my partner started a PR firm and I came in as an SEO guy, and we started talking about how there were less journalists and they were using technology to do their job, like search, to find subject matter experts and story sources, and how we could optimize news content, press releases, newsrooms, even executive credential content like photos and whatever, knowing that this is a way we can get inbound PR and augment some of the media relations work, and it really resonated with people.
And that's not the case anymore, right? I mean, those avenues have been largely shut down, right? Like you can't do a search engine optimized press release anymore.
Oh, no. I mean, you can't expect. In fact, you know, it's kind of ironic. PR Web was a platform you could use to do, you know, distribute optimized press releases, get links, because people would just copy, as people do, press releases as is and retain the links. And of course, none of that works anymore. No.
So, and you've graduated now and you're doing influencer marketing.
Yeah. So first, you know,
give everybody just a quick background. You're the CEO of Top Rank Marketing. Top Rank Marketing blog has been a top 3, #1 blog with Content Marketing Institute for 3 years. I think it's the only blog that has done that. Huge traffic. I think you're doing. I mean, I don't know if you look just like on the estimates, it looks like it's about 150,000 visitors a month on the blog. Tell us a little bit more about what's going on at Top Rank these days.
Sure. Yeah, we're a B2B focused marketing agency, content marketing agency. We create experiences that inspire people, and we do that through a mixture of content that, you know, text content, video content, audio content. We do a lot of podcasts, interactive content, even virtual reality, and a lot of technology companies are working with us to help them attract, engage, and, you know, earn more customers. And tactically, we do have very, very deep expertise in, as I mentioned, various types of content creation, but also we have DNA of SEO. So we do still leverage inbound and attract-based marketing to drive attention, as well as advertising. But we also optimize for credibility. And the way we do that is through external influencers, subject matter experts, but also by building up the influence of a brand, building up the influence of key opinion leaders and executives within the brand. And that all combines to create the kind of experience that really stands out, the kind of experience that, you know, it really differentiates brands from those who are still relying on traditional advertising, still relying just on social media, paid and organic, what organic there's left, to connect with their audiences. I mean, people are ignoring ads. They're not paying attention to, you know, formal marketing anymore. They just don't trust companies. But they do trust individuals. They do trust peers. They do trust some experts. And so we try to tap into that.
So, I mean, you just gave us basically a thesis of what you do. Obviously, you drill down on that based on what the customer needs. So talk us through tactically how you go about that. Like if I'm a client and I'm coming in and I'm trying to figure out where the low-hanging fruit for me is, what are some of the questions that you volley back and forth to help narrow down the options and figure out what's going to fit for a certain client?
Yeah, the starting point is always, what's the problem that you're trying to solve?
And let's say it's lead gen. I mean, that's always the problem in B2B. You know, we want leads that don't suck.
Why? Yeah, leads that don't suck. Okay.
But here's why. because our assumption is if we can improve lead quality and quantity and keep our conversion rate what it is or hold our conversion rate, that's going to grow revenues. If we can then upsell and cross-sell, move lifetime value up a little bit incrementally, we're going to see that hockey stick growth if we can start to up the conversion rates and increase the lifetime customer value. So what I
Right.
want is I want leads that don't suck.
So the first thing we're going to do is validate that hypothesis and do a little more homework to make sure that that sequence of assumptions is accurate. And when I say accurate, I don't mean because we think it's accurate, because it's validated by data. And if it is validated by data, great. Then our go forward is to talk about an approach that will increase lead quality. And obviously, that depends on the company. We've got to look at what it is that they're doing now, what's the current situation. We audit and compare the benchmark of what's happening today to what it is that we want to be happening, what does success look like, and we close that gap with a recommended set of tactics, or I should say it's an approach, and then the tactics that go along with it.
Are there common mistakes you see?
Sure. Just in that situation, or in marketing in general, and B2B marketing, influencer marketing?
In lead gen. So it's,
yeah.
I see quite frequently a marketing team celebrating leads and a sales team frustrated with lead quality. And that seems to be a pretty common scenario. So if you find that scenario, are there common practices that marketers are doing to generate poor quality leads?
Yeah, so when marketing and sales are very siloed and not communicating with each other, marketing is only held accountable to adding names, and that's an issue. So when there are not, sometimes when a B2B organization identifies the scoring that goes into qualifying a nurture program or for a nurture program, and they do it once, and then now they're just filling the top of that funnel with as much demand gen as possible, and they don't revisit that scoring. Things can change in the marketplace. Things can change in the nature of the product or the demand or application of how it's implemented or the problems that it's solving. There's a lot of things that can change. And if the scoring of what qualifies that prospect doesn't also change, then the lead quality can go in completely different directions than what sales is actually looking for or what marketing intends. That's often a big mistake, is this set it and forget it type of approach. I think a lot of times things can happen in the other direction, where marketing can do an exceptional job at meeting the initial criteria that sales agreed to in terms of what constitutes a good lead, and deliver on that way above and beyond, and then marketing and then doesn't respond to them, that lets them age, lets things fall off. This is obviously not sales being pissed off now it's marketing. It's going, look, we're delivering, but you're just not responding fast enough. You're not responding in a qualitative way. You're not responding in a relevant way, because they're cherry picking, and that can happen as well.
So when you go in and audit a funnel and look at what a client's doing and how you can improve it, what are you looking for?
We're looking at what's happening today. What kind of content, what's the approach, obviously, what kind of content is being created and what channels for who. We also want to look at who that buyer is, what are their goals, what are their pain points, what are they actually looking for. I'd say this matches up with the earlier question about one of the bigger problems, and that is not having a current view of the customer in terms of, what's present in the mind of the customer in terms of what questions they have. What is the journey today? What is the current state of the experience that they expect when looking for solutions in this particular industry or category, and that sort of thing. So that's a big problem when you don't have a current view of the customer. At the same time, when auditing a funnel, we want to look at what that current view is. Like, what does this actually look like today? You do primary research, you look at CRM data, you look at analytics data, whatever you can get to kind of get an up-to-date picture of what it is that's driving customers to perform the behaviors or actions that you're actually after. And you compare that to, of course, what's actually happening, you close the gap. So the audit identifies the current situation, and it documents with data what that current situation is, and we compare that to where we want to go. And literally, our go forward is our tactics to close that gap, to shorten sales cycles, to increase lead quality, to speed up the rate at which someone goes from a lead to a sale, or just literally increasing the volume, the quantity of quality, whatever it might be.
How popular is B2B influencer marketing these days?
B2B influencer marketing is more popular now than it was last year, the last few years. It's still not as popular as B2C influencer marketing, and that's a wonderful thing because there's all kinds of shenanigans going on with fake followers and non-compliance, and everyone in their family self-identifying as an influencer, taking some great selfies and trying to become inventory for some influencer marketplace where brands are looking for folks to create Instagram stories, YouTube videos, Snapchat posts, and whatnot. So in B2B, it's growing in popularity. I think there was a study by Spiceworks. I believe 47% of B2B companies plan on spending more money on influencer marketing here in 2020. But I think we can look forward to, and I believe it'll be early March when a brand new study will be released specifically about B2B influencer marketing. That's going to cover the gamut. And there isn't anything else. There hasn't been any influencer marketing studies specific to B2B that I've seen yet. So I think we'll get a lot of good answers out of that study here in March.
What is it that led Top Rank to grow into B2B influencer marketing?
In the early 2010, 11, for our own marketing, was in the habit of interviewing people who were influential in the SEO industry and content marketing industry. And we were approached by Dell. They wanted to create the Forbes of the IT industry and invited us to identify and recruit influencers to create ongoing content for a new publication. Simultaneously, Jason Miller from LinkedIn, who we had worked with at Marketo, and he moved to LinkedIn. And one of the first things he asked us to do is find influencers for something he was calling the Sophisticated Guide to Marketing on LinkedIn. And so we started to get these requests. And at the same time, I had a conversation with Joe Paluzzi, founder of Content Marketing Institute, about how we could work together. And I suggested a campaign where I interviewed speakers and would create an asset ebook before the conference as a way to promote the conference, right? And funny story, the learning about that, I sent 10 questions to 30 people and said, I'd like to interview you. And my idea was to publish these interviews in advance on our blog, popular blog, to promote the conference in advance of the conference. Out of the 30 interviews I sent out, only one person replied. And this was very frustrating. So one of the questions was asking about a secret, like, what's your secret to content marketing? So I came back and I asked as if I was in characters, like, imagine you're an undercover agent and you just come back from a meeting with your handler and you've now got the secret to save the content marketing world. What's that secret? And, just to make it a little fun, every single person responded with their secret. Some people like, hey, this is Joe Blow from big brand XYZ, Agent 39, here's my secret. So there are a lot of lessons learned out of that campaign. We produced that ebook very quickly. It published the weekend before the conference launched, and it had something like 47,000 views in 2 days. Other speakers were talking about it, and Ann Hanley came to me and said, I want to buy that for my conference. So that co-creation effort with industry experts that had a voice and an audience became one of the types of influencer marketing that we do today for brands like SAP, Adobe, Oracle, GE, or I should say GE Digital, 3M, and SAP. So we got into it out of necessity and opportunity.
Who was the one person who answered?
I don't remember his name, but I know he worked for some sort of engineering company. Yeah, I don't remember his name, but he wasn't someone that now that you see a lot in on the speaking circuit and content marketing. I think he was. I think he'd had a full career already.
If you'd have sent it to me, I'd answered, man. I'd answered it, man. You left me out.
I don't know.
Dude.
See, so
Come
now we have ways to romance people for collaboration, and we lead with value. And the whole idea is, what can we do to empathize with the audience that we're after, the audience of influencers that we're after? What value can we create for them in advance? And by the process of information exchange and co-creation, we're creating an experience for them that results in a content asset for the brand to use for thought leadership or demand gen. But at the same time, it serves a very specific purpose, and that is to give exposure to that influencer that they can then monetize through visibility to audiences that might pay them for consulting, that might pay them to speak, that might invite them to do, paid contributed articles or a book deal or whatever it may be.
But that assumes that the content that you're going to create as a result of the interview is going to be non-critical, right? It's going to be happy content.
It's marketing. It's marketing content. A marketing's purpose is to highlight.
You need some conflict to cut through the clutter, right?
Well, sure. There's lots of places that open themselves up to reviews to help serve or feed the need for that balanced view. And obviously industry media does a great job at covering a balanced view of companies that operate in that industry. When a company does its own marketing, unless it has a particular angle that's contrarian of itself, most cases it's going to be optimistic because it empathizes with the audience that's looking for why they should buy something, not why not. Even though everyone wants to hear why not, they don't necessarily expect a brand to lead with, here's why you shouldn't buy our product. That, of course, is a clever marketing tactic all by itself.
What is the biggest challenge you run up against when you're doing B2B influencer marketing?
I would say the challenge for us, we want to see the client be successful. We want to see the influencers be successful. The biggest challenge is that, brands still in the B2B space still look at influencer engagement as a project and not as a relationship. And that's a problem because these folks whose bread and butter is exposure and monetizing through consulting in many cases, or just being a known key opinion leader at their brand, they do rely in part on these opportunities to give them exposure and to feed their personal brand and the brands that they work for. And their loyalty to any B2B company that engages them or agency is really dependent on the strength of the relationship with that brand or with that agency. When a B2B brand looks at influencers as an ad buy, when a B2B brand looks at influencers only as a transaction for a campaign, wham bam, thank you, I'll see you later until 6 months from now when we need you again, that does not engender loyalty. It does not engender any reason for that influencer to say yes the next time. The other problem with this, of course, is that there's all kinds of room in between campaigns for that influencer to be advocating for the brand. But if the brand is showing no love, there's no reason for that influencer to be advocating.
How do you find and how do you qualify B2B influencers?
We have a crystal ball, Eric.
Can I see?
A very special tool.
Can we get a demo?
No, because no. It's imaginary. Well, okay, all right. It's right here.
It's like some Scandinavian thing that you guys have in Minnesota.
It's a ball with a tree in it, and it's the tree of influencer magic. We use software to identify influencers. We also do a combination of seeding. So the start of any influencer campaign starts with topic specificity. What is it that the brand wants to be influential about? It's kind of like SEO. Like, you can't optimize content without knowing what the buyer is searching for. So we need to know what topic is relevant for the brand. What topic do customers actually care about? Once we identify those topics of those specific topics of influence, we use that then we bring that into a tool. Like Tracker is a tool that we use, TRAACKR, and it works like an influencer search engine.
You like Tracker? You're bullish on Tracker?
I've been using Tracker 7 years plus. Some of our clients use another tool called Analytica. Analytica is also quite friendly for B2B. So both of them are great tools. They're both enterprise level tools. That means they're looking at more than Twitter data, which is what the vast majority of other influencer tools are only looking at. So Twitter is not the social web. Twitter's only a small slice, a big but small at the same time slice of the social web. So we use a combination of seeding. Seeding is talking to stakeholders. Seeding is talking to executives and asking them, who do you perceive as being influential in your industry? We just want to get an idea of what they say. We don't run with those, but we do bring those ideas into a tool, and then we use a combination of the tool's own algorithms and those ideas that have been volunteered by people who are very close to the industry and close to the customer. And that results in a list that we then work on to qualify. And at a minimum, you qualify through a combination of topical relevance to make sure that the individual publishing content is publishing content that topically resonates or is relevant to the topic you want to be influential about. Also resonance, the degree to which that topic resonates with their audience and their community, and then ultimately the size of their network. After that, there's a cut, and then we'll go and look at where they're publishing. Is there values alignment? Are these people going off on crazy political rants from time to time? Does that fit? We also look at the cadence in which they publish, the kind of content that they publish, and we add that all up into a set of recommendations of identified and qualified influencers.
So you're basically using Tracker as a starting place and then moving that into a proprietary tool that you guys have to sort of take it from there?
No, we're using primary research in combination with Tracker to identify and qualify those influencers. And then we're using manual inspection on the properties where they actually publish to verify that the cadence, the quality, the topics, and so forth are an exact match for the application that we have in mind.
So, sometimes when I'm using Tracker, I'll see people come up for a certain topic, but then when you dig deeper, you see, oh, well, they just talked about it once or twice. They're not really consistently discussing that topic.
Right.
And I was frustrated by that. I found that frustrating.
You've got to modify the weight that you're putting on relevance in that case. You've got to up the relevance filter quite a bit. And that's going to happen in any tool. That's why we do the manual inspection. It's just the way it is. No tool is perfect. And even as more bring AI into this, and there's learning to identify more at scale what effective behaviors, what effective content types and cadences and all those other things we look at manually actually look like. But until then, you have to manually inspect. You just have to. And I know a lot of people don't, and then they get surprised when that influencer gives them good quote, and then they go off on the rails somewhere, 2 months later, and the brand's like, oh my God, I can't believe we worked with that person.
It's interesting. I love best of breed solutions. They're great, but obviously they're not integrated. And so a lot of people tend to go with a sort of one size fits all solution, and they're out there, right? You got Meltwater, you got Cision, you got this new one, from the folks at West, Intrado, and several others that sort of check all the boxes. But I guess what you're saying is that most of these platforms just look at Twitter. And so
They
have
look
you
at
ever looked at one of the platforms that just uses Twitter against Tracker and sort of seen where the skew is?
the tool that we've used the most that primarily looks at Twitter is BuzzSumo. As BuzzSumo's been a very effective tool for a long time. And of course, BuzzSumo has both blog. I mean, obviously they're looking at social share data of blog posts, but on their influencer tool, if you will, it's only looking at Twitter data. And that's been very, very interesting. And, you know, it's kind of like, if you want to kick the tires, if you want to spot check something, it's fine to go take a look at that. But in terms of doing a side-by-side analysis with, like you said, Meltwater or and Tracker or something like that, that I haven't done, and I haven't needed to, because I'm very happy with using Tracker and in some cases using Analytica.
What about like when you're looking for a micro niche influencer, like a really narrow focus
Yeah,
influencer? Can you use Tracker for that, or are there other
you
ways
can
that you go about that?
You can use Tracker for that, but you can also, you know, look at the actual platform and use the search on the platform itself. And because if you like, why do you think that person? If you're thinking, okay, and then it is the direction in the industry to go for micro or nano influence, whatever. I think those are silly terms, really, because it's not that we're looking for people with a small number of followers. I mean, really, that's not the criteria. It's a silly criteria, and that's what those names imply. What we're looking for are people with really high degrees of engagement with whatever audience they have. So if they have 100 followers or 1,000 followers or 10,000 followers, and the engagement is off the charts, that's what we're looking for. So it's not that they're a small audience influencer. It's that they're an influencer with really high degrees of engagement, right? Because it'd be ridiculous to discount someone with 1 million followers that gets just as high engagement as someone with only 1,000 followers, right? Anyway, I'm off the soapbox there. If you want to find those people,
Tracker gives you the engagement score, right? I mean, Tracker shows you.
It does. It does. It does. Yes. Yes. And you can also scale, you know, how much contribution is engagement. I mean, you can filter more on engagement than other criteria. So that's a very helpful tool. And most enterprise tools should allow for that. Speaking of tools, one tool I would really look forward to people checking out that's going to go live sometime in first quarter, SparkToro. SparkToro isn't an influencer identification tool per se, but it is a tool that'll help you identify the various types of sources of information that will influence your audience. So podcasts, websites, social accounts, and individuals. And I've been beta testing, play around with this tool, and it's a different way of looking at the information, but it's a way that we've been looking at the way we use and work with influence in our company for a long time, except that it's software instead of doing it manually. So I would definitely recommend folks check it out.
Do they have a searchable database of what's being said on podcasts?
It's not what's being said on podcasts, but if you put in a person's Twitter handle, any search term, any website, it'll tell you what podcasts people that pay attention to those things are listening to.
How interesting. That's fascinating. One of the PR Tech Wednesdays we had a few weeks back, I had David Ives, who's the president of TVIs, and they announced at the PRSA International Conference a couple of months ago a spoken word searchable database of 13,000 podcasts that they're aggregating now. So they're basically monitoring 13,000 podcasts, doing voice to text translation, and then have created a searchable database where you can go in and see who's talking about what. Now, it's only available for, there's not a free service. It's part of the TVI's platform. But that for the first time makes the world of podcasting open to the media relations community, because, I mean, you ain't listening to 13,000 podcasts a week. You know, that's not going to happen. So
Exactly.
that was a pretty cool
That's very
development.
interesting. Very interesting.
So talk to us a little bit about how you measure the effectiveness of a B2B influencer campaign.
So obviously measurement rolls up to the goals. What goals do we have? Are we attract, engage, convert? Is the simple model that, or the most simple model that we'll use. So are we attracting the right audience? Are we engaging them, creating great experiences? And are we converting them to whatever objective that we're after? So in the case of influencers, in our case, it's always a content collaboration. And the content itself is a digital entity that has a URL, and therefore it is trackable, just like any other content marketing initiative might be. The only variation or difference with influencers, of course, is that when we want to track the effectiveness of the influencers sharing that content, so we'll encode those URLs specifically for each influencer, so we have an idea of how effective the cohort of influencers who are part of a campaign have been. We'll know how effective an individual influencer has been at sharing content for that particular campaign. We'll also be able to track things like, we'll take a benchmark measurement in terms of, if we have a cohort of influencers, like 10, 20, 50, or whatever, 100, and we want to know at our starting point, how often are they mentioning the brand? How often are they mentioning the brand in a positive way? And then, of course, we'll take that measurement as we go, and we're looking to increase the share of voice amongst that group of influencers, the frequency with which they are mentioning the brand in the context of the solution, mentioning the brand in the context of sentiment of some kind. So that's another measurement. We also look at whether any of those influencers are sharing any of the brand content, any kind. And we'll look at that as a metric over time. So there's campaign stuff. That's like, okay, we've got the start-stop element. There's social. There's some paid, maybe, that goes along with that. And then there's also the measurement, monitoring ongoing of what they're sharing relative to the brand for share of voice, and the degree to which they're amplifying brand content organically on their own.
So, you know, you built up this blog, Top Rank, and you know, I mean, I used to see you. You used to be furiously pounding out blog posts from conferences, and you were always getting stuff up quick. But I noticed that recently, I mean, I know you've got a company, and a lot of people do publish to the blog now. But I noticed that you don't blog as much anymore. It didn't.
No,
So
I
wanted to talk to you about
as
that.
much.
And
yeah, sure.
Not just, you know, why you're not blogging, because I'm sure you're busy, but kind of where are we with blogging today? Is blogging still effective? How has it changed? You know, how do you look at it differently? In the time that you've been blogging, how has the way you need to blog to get an audience changed, and how has what's possible with the blog changed?
Well, so I've been blogging since 15, 16 years. So that's when we started our blog. So a lot has changed in that time. And it used to be a conversation. So now that conversation, you know, between blogs, you'd write something, I'd write my response, I'd leave a comment, and then I'd elaborate on my comment and actually write a return blog post, and we go back and forth. That used to kind of be the way it was, or we'd cover things. And it turned into articles. You know, every blog post now has to be 2,000 words because the SEOs said so. And it's really changed quite a bit. Today, I don't blog as much now, that's true, because I'm investing my time in other spaces. I'm investing my time a lot more in real-world relationships and other operational aspects and responsibilities that I have with our agency. I do work with my team that does do the blogging at our company quite a bit. So even though my name isn't on the, you know, author credit, there's some of me in almost every blog post in one way or another. And I'm very happy to be a coach and to encourage my team to be the faces of the company in that way, because I have my own channels to do that. And we are more powerful as a brand when I approach it that way. I think there's more of an expectation to have an experience with blog content. So, That's where we publish our news in video format every Friday, not just as text. We do a lot more video interviews, like this one, right? And because that's what people want. And I think that's something that's changed. So blogging is different than it was when we started. But it's still the biggest driver of traffic and exposure to our company.
It is.
And it works in tandem with our social presence and our real world presence in a very, very symbiotic way. I'll meet someone at an event. I'll say, hey, can we interview you? We do an interview in video, publish it on the blog, and now we're connected on LinkedIn. And we, so the person sees me speak at a conference and they come back and say, hey, I'd like to maybe hire your agency, as an example. So it's a symbiotic relationship.
What about the technical aspects of search, inbounds and relevancy? I was at this event down at USC Annenberg. There was this guy who had written, a New York Times journalist had written this book about Dragonfly, Project Dragonfly, which was that a search engine that Google developed for the Chinese government, and they found out about it because it allowed the Chinese government to spy on search habits of users, and then they denied it, but then they, got nailed. And it was the panel was the guy who wrote the book, the whistleblower from Google who got fired, his lawyer, and then someone who made a movie about it. And one of the things he said, I wish I would have written it down because I'm just going to try to paraphrase, but one of the things he said was, the algorithm doesn't work like it used to. Now it's all about, you have to pay to play. So that's what he was saying. He's saying the people who get the big traffic, they're paying for it. You can't just get it organically anymore. Was at least what I interpreted from what he said, and I could have gotten it wrong. But I mean, is that true, or is it still citation index?
It's a sweeping generalization, is what it is, right? I mean, how could anything be universally so different? So no. I mean, who is he talking about? Is he talking about a major brand?
He was talking about Google. He was talking about
Google. No. I mean, on Google. I know he's talking about Google, but in terms of
search,
Google's not paying for. Yeah, Google is paying for its own traffic. But when this person's saying that it's no longer possible to get organic traffic on Google, you have to pay to play, and that's it.
It wasn't that specific. And I mean, obviously, you go to all the SEO conferences where each aspect of search is debated ad nauseum. This was a sweeping statement, but I just thought I'd mention it, not to have either deny or validate it, but to sort of set up
search has changed.
Is it still about
search has absolutely changed? Right. I mean, Google's still crawling content, copying it, sorting it, and counting on hundreds of signals to determine what's the best answer. But it's not the best answer for all of us. It's the best answer for us as individuals because we've got search history, our location, and so forth, or the lack of history, all factor into what experience we have. You and I can right now both search on the very same thing, and we're going to get different results depending on what query it is. If we both type in B2B influencer marketing, we might get similar results. But if we type in B2B or B2B marketing agency, you're going to get folks based on your geo, and I'm going to get results based on my geo, right? So it really depends on the query. And a lot more has changed about search too, right? The role of AI is more significant now in terms of how Google works, and the use of entities, classification, and structured data has made the work of SEO from a technical perspective a little bit different than in the past. So it's not about just popping keywords and title tags and anchor text links, right? It's really about creating the kind of content that drives user behavior in a way that indicates that this is really useful information and therefore deserves that top spot, right? And Another issue, of course, is that Google's taking a lot more content off of web pages and copying it and putting it in the answer box, and that results in people just not even clicking through to the answer. So that's a type of query that people used to get a lot of traffic on. Maybe they're not getting so much traffic to their websites. They're getting exposure in the search results, but they may not be getting traffic to their websites as much. So there's a lot has changed, you know. And in any business and in marketing, you've got to go with those changes. You've got to adapt, right?
Are you, do you like those answer boxes? Is that something you go for clients, or do you think because people don't click through them, they're really not that valuable? Those structured snippets?
We would go for the featured snippet. The featured snippet is what we would go for, and there's a link there. If I just, you know, if I'm asking a question like, what is content marketing? And if Google showed a featured snippet, let's say, what is content marketing? It would show an image from my site or some other website, which is just the weirdest thing. And then it'll take an excerpt of my content, but it'll still have a link. And that's cool. Like, you would want a featured snippet. It's got a lot more screen real estate in the search results page.
What surprises you most about where we are today with SEO?
That there's some things that are still the same. So it's remarkable to me the number of SEO blogs and conferences that are talking about this amazing combination of skills, SEO and public relations. So do you remember, what is it, almost 20 years ago?
Are you serious? You're hearing that?
I am serious. They are talking about it like it's a brand new thing.
Wow.
They just found media relations. And these are, they obviously, people in SEO have been talking about media relations to activities as link building for a long time. But the fact that they're still talking about it as a link building tactic as opposed to media exposure to people who buy stuff is amazing. It is amazing to me. Yeah. So that surprises me. You know, it does surprise me a little bit that some things have stayed this, you know, there's still some sameness, even though the industry has changed quite a bit. Now, I have to say that I used to spend 90% of my time in the SEO world. Today, I characterize myself as a recovering SEO. So it's more like 20% of my time. But that number is going up. As you know, our business is doing a lot more search specific work. And that area is just growing. It's growing a lot. And I think the fact that we sort of optimize for findability and credibility and experience through this intersection of content, search, and influence has been a winning combination in terms of delivering buyers via organic search. There's a congruence between the topic specificity that allows for best answer search results to happen with the topic specificity that makes sense in terms of who's influential about what. And bringing those together with content has been incredibly productive at attracting organic search traffic, as well as attracting people who are paying attention to the influencer and then go pull themselves to a website and, you know, make an inquiry. So I'm spending not as much time as I used to, but I'm increasing the amount of time I'm spending in the search engine optimization industry. And I'm lucky to have some really, really talented people on my team taking care of all the hard work.
You know, one of the areas that is sometimes uncomfortable or difficult from a media relations SEO intersection standpoint is the discussion, like with whoever is taking the story or publishing the story, whether it be something that you wrote or a client wrote that you're placing, or something that's getting written about a client that's getting placed, is, you know, that inbound link, and is it going to be a follow link? Is it going to be a no follow? We don't want to mention it.
Yeah.
Let's see what happens. I mean, talk to us about that conversation, because I imagine you've had that conversation quite a bit.
Sure. You know, it's funny. A lot of people just obviously an SEO person is going to ask for the link. They're going to, you're going to include the link, or they'll supply the manuscript of the contributed article, and of course they'll embed links where they want them. And the journalist will say, we have a policy of no links, or we have a policy of, we can have 2 links and they've got to be no follow. So, a person might go, well, I'm going to get an author credit, right? Can you at least link to my website? Or I actually have an information page that drills down even more specific on the topic the article is about. Can I have that as a link, within my author bio? And maybe they can get it that way. But sometimes you're just not going to get the link. However, it's still valuable when your company, as an entity, whether you're as an individual, as an entity, are identified on a website, on another domain that has credibility. That is a signal. Even though it's not a link, it is something. So it's not the same thing as a link. It's not an explicit indication of trust or endorsement or what have you. But, the things that create credibility or expertise, authority, and trustworthiness, the EAT emphasis that Google's quality rater guidelines articulate, do come in the form of non-links citations as well as linked citations, right? And really, the reality is that only makes sense because that's the way the real world is working. But of course, if you can get the link, you want to get the link.
Have you ever, and obviously, I mean, it would have to be really juicy, hot news, but have you ever been able to negotiate a follow link in exchange for an exclusive?
No. No,
just an idea.
I'm sure other people have. I know. I haven't been in that situation, though. But it's a good idea. How about you? Have you?
I don't think so. No, I don't think I've ever been in that situation. When I was doing hardcore media relations back in the day, people didn't really know what a no follow or a follow link was, and you pretty much just always got the follow link. I mean, that was in the day when you could essentially optimize a press release, throw it out over a wire, and get 30 pickups and inbound links, and 15 minutes, and those days are long gone because Google's obviously plugged all the leaky buckets to try to preserve the integrity of their search engine.
Right. I think what people got to think about in terms of link building through media relations or PR is not so much about getting, supplying the publication with content that has a link back to you, but supplying them with information about a story where the story lives as content on your own website, and it would be impossible for them to duplicate in the article. So they have to link to it if they want to create value for their users, for their readership. So it's a tool. It's an experience. It's not an embeddable video. I mean, you might create a promo video to sell the idea, but ultimately you're creating a destination, again, that is impossible to replicate. So in order to create value for their readership, they've actually got to link to it so that people understand what the heck it is that they're talking about.
If you had your DNS on a your DNS, not what's the paid video one that everyone uses, Vimeo. If you had the DNS on a Vimeo account at your domain, and you hosted the video on your Vimeo account, posted that was transiting over to you, that lived at your top level domain, and you got somebody to embed that, would that be an inbound link? Like if I embed a YouTube video on my website, am I giving YouTube an inbound link?
I'd say no. I don't think Google would choose, if we're talking about Google, I don't think Google would choose. Is Google capable of crawling a JavaScript link or a link that makes an embeddable video appear? Yeah. But would they count that as endorsement, as a citation in the way that a link from text that is explaining something? No.
Probably not. Yeah. I want to wrap it up with a discussion about this news release that Gartner put out just last week, and it's about this new report. And the headline of the press release is Gartner predicts 80% of marketers will abandon personalization efforts by 2025. Now, 2025 is a few years away, so that doesn't mean personalization isn't going to be productive for a lot of people between now and then. But the quote I wanted to read to you from the press release, which I thought sums it up pretty well, and it's a quote from Charles Govlin, who's the senior director analyst in Gartner for marketers, who wrote who's one of the authors. Here's his quote: "Consumers have developed an increasingly jaundiced eye towards marketers' efforts to embrace them. Their increasingly cluttered email inboxes and mobile phone notification centers may lead them to ignore even the most carefully personalized and contextualized messages. Marketers must really adopt the basics when it comes to test and learn before investing in personalization technology and new tactics." And he basically goes on to say, it doesn't matter how well you personalize, people don't, if it's attributed to an organization, people don't want to hear it, which kind of ties into what you were saying about, going through influencers at the beginning of this conversation.
Right.
Personalization is really hot in sales right now. There's all these unicorns. There's outreach.io and sales enablement platforms that are being used to help automate and make consistent outreach so that they can
Mm-hmm.
test and optimize based on a repeatable process. And they're really interesting tools. And I went to a conference at Dreamforce about sales enablement, which was pretty exciting, and a lot of really hot companies there. And they're all doubling down on personalization right now. So what are your thoughts about that? Do you see personalization working? Do you see the sunset? I mean, what's your sort of view on where we're
Right.
at with it now?
So I think we're dealing with a couple of issues. One is that I think the declining trust in brands. Trust is declining in brands. Trust is declining between consumers and brands' efforts to connect with them, because they're trying to connect with them with a hammer over and over and over and over again. And even though that hammer is increasingly personalized, it's still a hammer. Like when I get if I bought something from Nordstrom online, and then now, there's a lot of things that Nordstrom sells that I would buy, but the email, the personalized emails, they're like, oh, this is still in your cart, or here's something you looked at that's or something related to what you looked at, So, like, delete. It's too much. Like, it doesn't matter that it's personalized. It's just too much, right? And I think that is an example of the kind of disillusionment that a lot of consumers are feeling around brands that are investing in really great personalization technologies. And what they're not getting is that, yes, it's better to be personalized than not. But if you're overwhelming the buyer with personalized messages, right? It's like, too much. It's just too much, and it's annoying, and it's information or it's ad overload. And so this is, as you mentioned, this is why connecting with, understanding the spheres of influence or networks of or centers of influence for a buyer is really important. And to some extent, it is getting emails, but it's also publications that you subscribe to. It's also people that are just friends that are part of your networks. It's experts, celebrities, it's events, associations, whatever, right? Having an understanding of what those spheres of influence are for an individual allows a marketer to deposit the right kind of message at the right cadence in the right channels, and duplicating them in different channels so that, oh, I do a search, there you are. Oh, there's an ad, there they are. Here's my friend, they're mentioning you. Here's an expert, they're mentioning you. There's a publication, here's an associate. And I keep seeing the same answer in an organic or relevant way. Again, the timing, the cadence, the format are appropriate in the channel that's appropriate. And that spells what we call a best answer marketing approach, you know? So personalization that is just, you know, overwhelming, it's no good for anybody. And I think people are doing the shiny object thing with personalization. And if they're going to do too much of a good thing, you know, it's just not good anymore, to oversimplify it a little bit.
Lee, thanks a lot for taking the time to do this. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Eric. It was great to chat with you and see you again in your slim self.
Thank you so much. Nice of you to say. All right, man. Happy holidays.
Yeah, you too.
Hey, everybody, signing off. Join us next week for Deirdre Breckenridge. Then we're going to be dark on Christmas, which is a Wednesday, and New Year's, which is a Wednesday too. We'll be back on the 4th with Jay Bear. Thanks so much, and we'll see you on the next PR Tech Wednesday.